Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Q&A here on twitch.tv/Lotus Stream. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. I'm Cordovan, the community manager here for Standing Stone Games, and let me get him up here. With me is Rob Ciccolini, our executive producer. How you doing, Rob?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Great. All right, so we took a bunch of questions, got some on the forums. We're going to have tons in chat. There's already about 100 of you here, and that number will probably grow in the coming moments. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. So we've been doing a couple of Friday live streams, and we'll be doing a few more here in the coming weeks, really in the lead up to Before the Shadow. And then I think once that cycle's done, we'll probably get back into doing something like a weekly live stream here anyway. So you can kind of see this as a return of our Friday live streams in some ways. This one is with Sev. You know, we had Orion last week, and in the coming weeks, not next week, but I think 2 weeks from now, we're going to have Scenario with us to do kind of a casual stroll type show. And we've kind of got that going on really for at least penciled in roughly most every week for the next couple of months. So it should be a nice thing to check out. Welcome everyone for joining us here this Friday. Notice that I'm not calling it Court of the Rings, but it's kind of a Court of the Rings because it's kind of like what we did when I was doing that show on the weekly again, and that show will be coming back. But I think, like I said, after this kind of cycle of shows, that we got some great content and hopefully questions and answers and features and cool things to look at and see here and check out. So welcome everyone for being here. So what's on your mind here, Sev? What do you want to say as way of introduction to the crowd?
I'm hoping everybody is excited. There's a lot of Lord of the Rings chatter out there, and we're all excited about it. We have our Before the Shadow t-shirts. We have our Before the Shadow t-shirts. We have our Before the Shadow t-shirts. Super exciting. And yeah, so we're here to talk about, what's going on, answer some questions, say hi, chit chat about whatever you want to chit chat about.
I think I might have actually caused a brief echo for Before the Shadow t-shirts, but that's fine. It's just an audio effect. That's all that was. I was just quick checking our audio levels, and I think I accidentally caused a brief feedback loop for just a second there. Sorry, folks. We've got that fixed now. So let us get started with some questions. Feel free to ask your questions in chat. You can ask anything you want. We are talking to our executive producer here, so more granular systems questions about, say, what you would like to see done with the warg or in PvMP, or perhaps some of the more specific minstrel feedback that we've received in recent weeks is probably better directed toward folks like Orion or other members of the team who are more directly working on that content and able to address it. And like I said, we did have like Orion last week, and we've got more happening here in addition to the forums as well. So I just kind of want to see what we can do for questions that we can talk about. We want to make sure we can get you the best answers possible. We always throw in a bunch of wish list questions, and those are, hey, could we have this really cool thing that I'd really love to see in the game? The answer is usually yes on that. We just can't really commit to doing unexpected things live on the air here. So we love reading and seeing those suggestions, but we're trying to keep this focused on things that we can answer to the best of our ability today. So if you do ask a question and don't see us immediately address it, perhaps we're not in a great position to answer that. But I know that we got lots. I'm already seeing a bunch of stuff in chat. What would you like to start with here, Sev?
Let's start with some of the harder questions.
Okay.
So there's good and bad news. Our customer support has really had new agents come on and has started to move through the queues. The queues that I see, the in-game queues, have been greatly reduced. The account queues are down to the point, and I'm speaking with Nemoras 17. The account queues are always difficult because we can't simply assign an account to someone without a lot of proof that that person actually owns it. And that's actually a really hard problem because like There are people who try to get you to give them their password so they can steal your account. There are also people who try to do that through CS, and the process of vetting that is difficult. There's also some times where people have shared accounts, which we highly advise against, and then both of them want the account and both of them claim it's. So our account queue still has some people in it that are difficult to fix. So I apologize for that, but we do have the other agents in, and I've seen that the account queues, the in-game queues are much lower, and the account queues are lower, but there's still some tough nuts to crack in there that we're sort of working. We are working on multi-factor authentication. That is ongoing. We have engineers actively working on it and generating code, but I don't want to give a date for that because it's a hard, it's a difficult issue with to make that work with our account system. So the two-factor authentication, multi-factor authentication of some kind is something that we're actively working on right now. And I hope to have more news at the beginning of next year about when that might be looking. Going up, some stuff.
Well, I have a question here. This one's from Hoppa Joel. Do we have a release date for our, quote, Hobbit Lore Master patch, that being 33.2? And I think the answer is we can comfortably say that update 33.2 is scheduled for next week. So
soon.
Yep.
Soon. I don't have a final build in hand, so I don't want to commit to next week, but we would like to get that out next week, which means that there's a whole bunch of cool stuff that's coming. I just don't want to jinx it, right? Did
I just jinx it? I think I might have just jinxed it.
Now we know if we have any problems or the build blows up or the machine goes down or something, it's Cordovan's fault. You heard it here first. It's Cordovan's fault when something goes. Let's see. Kinship changes we're definitely looking at doing some cool stuff for next year. We definitely want to support our kinships. I don't want to go into that system because we're still figuring out all of the cool changes that we talked about. What is the scope of engineering required to implement them? So I don't want to give you sort of our pie in the sky answers about the stuff we've been talking about until I have a solid foundation of what it will take for engineering to do those.
You had asked about maybe tackling a couple of the tougher questions up front here. So this one actually is from the forums. I saw it come in pretty early after we announced this stream. This is from Singularity Now, saying lag, not we're working on it, we're always looking at things. Specifically, what do you think is making it happen? What resources do you wish you had to address it? And basically, what are we seeing? Why do higher servers lag more than lower ones?
Well, I mean, obviously, if more people are on there, they're using up more resources. That's an easy question. So let's talk about lag. There are a couple of things that have happened recently that have caused a small spike in lag, or even a big spike in lag for some. Number one, in order to combat lag, we have resurrected and brought back tools that basically clean up the database in real time and then vacuum out that data so the data stays nice and tidy. Because of that, there was a lot of legacy data that needed to be cleaned up. And we had like a couple of weeks where all of the servers had this chunking in the background cleaning up the data. I believe that most of the servers that we turn this on are now caught up. And so that kind of wave of lag came in that was database lag. And you would see that in opening vendors or touching quests or anything that might touch the database directly. So that's the kind of thing that you definitely should have seen 3 weeks ago starting. And there was depending on the size of your server, there was anywhere from a 4-day to a 2-week kind of period where that was chunking along. That should be done almost everywhere. So that extra lag should be gone at this point because that's caught up and hopefully that will be running in the background and at a reasonable pace and not cause any more, if that makes sense. In addition, we have definitely identified lag revolving around our quest system. So when they implemented the quest system, no one understood or really planned to have 15 years of quests put into the game. So one of the things that we definitely are working on and have a fix in place, but we're testing and trying to get that in as soon as possible, is there are quests. A quest is a quest is a quest, whether you have a skill quest or a deed. And it all goes into this giant list of quests, of which there are numbers that have accumulated over 15 years. We've identified that one of the problems is that there are skill quests that every time that you swing a weapon or use certain skills, it actually counts that, and that count goes into the quest system and causes constant server lag. The other issue is, I don't know if you've noticed, is there are places in game where it grabs all of the quests and goes through them in a way that isn't particularly performant. And so you'll see this when you open up certain quest givers or such, and it's just lag. And anybody on the server will lag. So we're working on quest system fixes. We just have to be careful because the quest system is so integral in the play experience that we don't want to put in something that causes problems. So
they can also be tricky to verify the fix for. In some cases, there's a lot of process, especially involved with things that are like, well, this calls the deed system or whatever the effect system that we're talking about here. There's a lot of potential for halo when you're doing these kind of changes as well. So
I agree.
It does tend to be something that you have to do very considered when you want to implement these kind of changes. But what you're saying is we are doing some of that work.
I don't know that skill counting quests are worth the lag on the server. Now, I don't know that if I would take away deeds and such, because it encourages people to explore. And Lotro is a big exploration game. There are people who just like to explore every nook and cranny, and we want them to be able to see progress on that rather than just go around fighting things and leveling. So we definitely don't want to take that kind of questing away. We do want to make it more performant. But with some of the changes that we've done and some of the changes that we're planning on doing, I really think that we'll see some lag reduction, and you should see less lag this week than you did in, say, the previous 3 weeks when we were running the database utilities. In addition, we know that after that, lag will be better because we can see it we can see where the server has spikes of activity, but it won't be fixed. That will be an ongoing process. So after this, I'm sure that there will still be things, and then we'll take the next level of problems and we'll start addressing. So we have a strong engineering team because we've added some people. They're moving through and going that. We're looking at adding more tech ops people to address this as well. So yeah, I think that you will see some behind the scenes fixes. Unfortunately, the database changes, which are necessary to reduce lag, at first, it kicks up all the silt. And we've seen that in the last few weeks. We definitely saw an uptick in players saying, "Oh my God, there's more lag," when we turned on these utilities to fix the server base.
All right. Would you like to take a question from chat while I'm looking at maybe the next forum question?
64-bit servers is the problem with the servers isn't moving them to 64-bit. That's done. It's that there are a lot of utilities that interact with the servers that we also have to make 64 bits and middleware that we're working on. I think right now there is an issue of the contact between the 64-bit chat DLLs and the 64-bit servers. I know that's kind of like engineering heavy, but that's one of the things that is preventing us from moving forward right now with the 64-bit servers. Our engineering people are working on it to get the chat DLLs speaking properly and make sure all the middleware works is proper. So that's where we are.
All right. I've got one from the forums list. This comes from Istvana. The question is a little bit wordy, but it makes sense why it's being asked the way it is. Are there any plans to shut Shadowfax down before it reaches level 140? Is it currently intended that Shadowfax will be left until it reaches 140? Istvana explains, these are not the same questions, since a no to the first could imply that things are in limbo rather than a specific intent to leave the server alive. So what are our plans here for Shadowfax?
Any server that reaches our current game that doesn't have a tremendously large population will get eventually rolled into the game once you're caught up. Because what we want to do is we want to give other players the opportunities to have other legendary servers. We can't have the number of servers that we run constantly increase so once Shadowfax, in the many years it will take, because it's the server that is the
Shadowfax is the fast one. So
the fast one. Once the fast one reaches, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Cheap. Once that reaches level 120 and it's fully up to speed, 140, and it's fully up to speed at the end game, we will probably do the same thing and roll the players into normal servers. But with any server, if the population is large enough to warrant it, those plans may change.
Yep. So just to recap for Shadowfax, then, when Shadowfax reaches the current level cap of the game, the rest of the game, presumably 140 because of the speed of Shadowfax in this case, but not necessarily. Whenever that would happen, where it catches up with the level cap of the rest of the current game, the intention would be to do something similar to what we recently did for Honor and have a free transfer period where characters would move off of it.
Yeah, I mean, it would work like our other servers would work. I don't want to start talking about the details of something that will happen in the future in case there are different hardware requirements, but I wouldn't expect that to change unless there was specific problems of the last time, and other than the task of actually having to move your characters, we didn't see any specific.
All right, is there a question you want to bring up here?
Let's look. Someone asked about switching characters is very slow. I think that part of that is our characters are big after 15 years of data. Part of that is the quest system. Part of that is also inventory. Our character-specific inventory needs to be paginated because opening it up in the bank is slow. So we do want to do that. So that is something that I wanted to address. Will we be seeing a graphics overhaul? We are currently working with on overhauls to Lotro to add more graphic fidelity. Now, will it be a 100% new engine? No, but I think that there's a lot of old tech and art in the game that can be raised. So I would expect characters to look better, a lot of our older art to be raised up to modern standards, and additions made to things like how textures display in our lighting system that will show a good improvement in the game. We are currently working on that as part of the Lotro remap. We'll probably have more news about that at some point, maybe even before the year end, but if not, early next.
All right. This seems to kind of roughly lead out of that. Strider 5548 asked on the forums, can we get kind of whatever state we can of the roadmap for like the next year? What are we looking at here coming down the pike for Lotro?
Sure. I mean, the players can expect some big, exciting, huge thing in the fall every year. I mean, that's our basic goal, right? So it's not like any secret that we're trying to do something big and exciting for them in the fall. So next year, we're basically we're mapping out, and I don't want to give away too much about where we're moving next in the landscape and how that will lead to new areas. There are a lot of areas and story that we can explore now as we focus more on the players as heroes going forward, that I think will be super exciting. And I would not be surprised to see us maybe if you like the smell of salt water, that you may be pleased in the coming year, but that's all I'm going to say.
Oh, okay, that's a tease. Short term here, of course, we have Before the Shadow. We also have the Harvest Math Festival that'll be coming up very quickly. Two very small events happening very shortly. The Tale of the Shipwrecked Mariners is happening now in game through the weekend, and then next week is the Baggins birthday event, so that's happening as well. Then I know that I've already seen some discussions on like Yuletide as well, so we'll have presumably some follow-up patch to update 34, and we'll have more for Yuletide as well. So I know we've got that coming here in the short term at least. So, yep. All right, what do you want to tackle next?
I mean, more cosmetic Halloween outfits are definitely something that we'd like to do. One of the difficulties of having something big and cool every fall is that it becomes difficult to also work on the Halloween uh, uh, festival, even though we know it's popular. That's something that we haven't quite solved this year because we brought on new people and they're coming up to speed. Hopefully, it'll be something that we can work out. How are we going to make Halloween continue to be exciting and still also release something in the fall? That is an ongoing issue that I know that I would, because I love Halloween stuff too, and I would love more Halloween things. But it's really hard when you're trying to put out some big exciting thing during the time to move off to the side and work on the Halloween festival. We're going to have to get into the habit of updating the Halloween festival early in the year and then holding back all of that for.
All right, Daddy.
Endgame.
Yeah, Daddy John. Yeah, let's take that one. When can Endgame players expect some new content?
So in 35, we are planning on an Endgame instance cluster with some substantial Endgame stuff with extra tiers that the players can work on. In addition, for this content, the skirmish will scale up. We'll have 1 6-man that they can do, and then the missions. There'll be fewer missions, but the missions have these things called delvings in them, and the delvings will allow you to pump up the difficulty of the mission and get extra skills, extra abilities, maybe some other challenges in the mission, and also have these things, and also have dread. And what'll happen is when you do that, the rewards there will give you a way to find some higher end rewards. For instance, one of the difficulties players have had is finding specific tracery. Like, it's so random now that when they're hunting down their tracery, it's really difficult. So one of the things we hope to solve is that there will be ways to basically get the traceries you want from the delving system. And then 35 will have a lot of endgame instancing for the players.
Cool.
So for the skirmishes, we have a brand new skirmish coming, and the systems is working on a way to itemize it and make it feel rewarding. I don't know that I wouldn't say that this skirmish is going to go back and retrofit all of the skirmishes, although we do want to make skirmishes feel better, more than just leveling tools to do that. So the new skirmish will definitely be there, and we're setting up we're kind of setting up for the long-term goal of once we get the missions delvings working. I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to try to do skirmishes with delvings. I think that it will be kind of a cool way to do group content and make them more challenging and interesting by adding delvings to skirmishes. Not for this next update. The delving system is just it's pretty complex, and we can't just throw it in any content without testing and balancing. But I think that that's something skirmishes that we'll be looking for in the.
I had I think Orion had mentioned something about his intention to do something like that recently. I believe somewhere on the forums or Discord, perhaps. One of the things that so I've been working in recent days on an article for delvings for Lotra.com, and I think one of the things that maybe I don't know how clear it is in the minds of the community, but so one of the ideas of delvings is that you will progress through on higher difficulties. So you'll essentially get a stone that you will seat into. You'll get a gem that you'll seat into a stone, inside of, say, like a new Before the Shadow mission, and that'll have you run it on Delving difficulty tier 1. Completing that difficulty tier 1 will award you a gem that, when placed into the next Delving Stone, will allow you to unlock it on tier 2 and play it that way. So you're progressing further through the difficulty, but not necessarily on a single mission. You know, the gem will be applied to anything that has this delving system applied. So you're sort of delving deeper, you know, hence the name delving, right? You're delving deeper into the difficulty for increased reward and things like that. And we'll have more detail on some of the specifics of like kind of how you'll get the rewards and things in that article.
There will be ways for you to take your gem and change it to a different difficulty. You will not have to do 1, then 2, then 3. If you want to jump up,
yes,
you can go to, there's going to be a vendor that you can take your gem and trade in for higher difficulty. If you're really geared and a skilled player and want to try to jump into the higher difficulties, you can do that. You won't have to go through 1, 2, 3 in order to get there.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That is a default mechanic that will take place, right? So you will have that option to progress that way if you want to. But yes, from the vendors, as a matter of fact, you can get it with some coin and essentially the a lower tier version of the gem. Will allow you to trade it. So
the other rewards for delvings will be actually gear. You can get these writs that will let you get gear eventually, but also sometimes gear that's rare or incomparable will just drop but the higher level of the delving, the more chance that has. So if you're doing a lot of level 1, 2 delvings, that probably will be rare. If you're doing a lot of 10, it will be less rare. Although it's going to be hard for you to get that kind of level of gear without, all of the time. So it's not just focused on trace. I just know that there are endgame people with alternate builds or alts that are having problems. One of the feedback things is that they would like a better way of getting traceries. So I just mentioned that because I know that was something that we were talking.
Yeah, the rewards have actually been described as commensurate with tier 3 raid gear as a potential for the system. So we are offering a pretty high caliber of itemization, with gear and such, with this delving system for those who want to pursue it.
Yeah. The delving system will only be for missions, so solo players can do it. I think that you can group for missions. Most of my mission play has been all solo, so but the delving system eventually will be applied to skirmishes, which will definitely be group, although you can always try to jump into a skirmish as 2 or even 1 if gear is good. And then there's even been talk about putting it into 6-mans to really pump up the difficulty in those. But you have to be careful because having 2 levels of difficulty, one going up in tiers and the other one going up in delving, can be something that the players can play with in order to try to balance out where they want their difficulty. But it also adds a complexity to those that we want to be careful. But so that's what we're. Going back, once you have a gem, and once you put gem in, the gem becomes a cracked gem. So if you fail in the delve, you can then try to redo it. It's not like you've lost your opportunity.
Yeah, you'll essentially trade it in for a not cracked version for your next run.
So the good news is our current systems team likes PvMP, and so there's always a chance of us adding small stuff to PvMP. Let's see. So
Squirrel had asked this question. I want to. Squirrel worked pretty hard to get this question into our chat. So if you don't mind, let's tackle this. This is really a 64-bit client question. With the 32-bit client being deprecated, Squirrel writes in a few months. They have some kinnates that kinmates that need to continue to use it due to technical reasons. What are we going to do for people on a 32-bit client who feel they need to continue to use a 32-bit client?
So it depends on why you're using a 32-bit client. If you're working on a old machine that is incapable of 64-bit, which isn't supported in any way, shape, or form by Windows or anyone, it might be a problem. If you're doing it because you are there are people who swap back to the 32-bit because they've run into launcher install issues where the 64-bit gives them a black screen, and that's because there are DLL discrepancies behind the scenes. For this reason, we are in the process of beginning to build a new launcher from scratch. Our launcher is pretty old. It uses old tech. We'd like to do a new launcher so that the install is smoother. There isn't a single update that goes by where I don't see in the various Facebook groups or something, hey, I started using, I did an install and all of a sudden my client isn't working and now I have to uninstall and reinstall. And then they're all like, what should I do? And some people are like, well, switch to 32-bit client, see if that works. But that's not really a good solution. And other people are like, well, install and disinstall. And other people are like, well, go into your ini file and change your DirectX version in your ini file. But really, our launcher should do all that. So that's why we're working on a new launcher. So that is that'll be a long term. We had our first meetings on it in terms of scoping that and working out how that will work with our account system. So bear with me, but that and multi-factor authentication are definitely kind of things that will work.
Great. Let's take a question maybe you wanted to bring. You want?
Let's see. The problem is most of the stuff has scrolled off.
Okay.
Let's see.
I can slow down chat if I need to. I don't think we're quite there yet. Let me see.
I don't know why we have so much Asheron's call aficionados in this.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
You really want to derail me, don't you? Yes, the landscape difficulty options need to come to the normal servers. I think the biggest concern was that there is some pre-endgame areas that we want to test before we do that, and we don't want to try to bring that over with this with before the shadow because we're concerned that if it causes problems, it might cause issues with before the shadow. So you can expect the difficulty to be moved over at some point. Right now, we do not have. We are concentrating on lead content rather than the producer position right at the moment. I'd like to fill that before we go back to producer.
I think you might have briefly cut out a little bit there. You said we're looking for a lead content designer.
We're concentrating on finding a lead content position. That is where our attention lies. Until I have that filled in and have that settled in, I don't want to try to introduce a producer at the same time. So we're not. If you're wondering what the idea of the producer.
Nanda asked from the forum list beforehand, what is a rough schedule for class reworks? What are we going to be doing on class reworks? We have Minstrel, say, coming in 33.2. Do you foresee further class work happening here short term?
Sure. We want to see the impact of Minstrel. One of the interesting things about Minstrel is making it so that there are some big advantages to going with two main specs and a side spec. And some of the people that identify as yellow minstrels feel as though they are forced to move into a different kind of minstrel. And I get that. But I think that having three different basic specs, I think if we move to two, it will make it easier to not have throwaway. My concern right now is that a lot of the classes have like a throwaway tree where it's clear that people might play it for flavor, but it's not competitive. And it's really hard to have to completely balance that. So we're going to see how the Minstrel happens. And for all the gold minstrels that are moving to other minstrel trees, we're hoping that you will find an awesome minstrel playstyle and minstrel identity in the new system. So as we move forward, we're going to see how that does. So, and then class balance is an ongoing issue. So we will constantly be doing and revisiting class balance, because not only is it an issue, the interesting thing about class balance is not only is it an issue in an absolute sense, but also whatever the latest high-end content in raid does and how that content works can really affect class balance. Like if it's a really melee unfriendly raid, which we kind of don't want to do, but sometimes that happens, all of a sudden the balance changes. Or if there's a creature that is specifically vulnerable to something, the balance changes. So class balance is an ongoing. You will see more class balance tweaks and fixes as we go on. So keep up the feedback on, how you're seeing classes form in raids and six mans, and we will continue looking.
All right. I got a question you want to...
Sure. The few updates ago, the raid landscape groups have been changed to no longer gain XP loot from monsters. There are sometimes we have to make hard decisions for purposes of performance. And when we see large groups of landscape people that are encouraged to do that are hitting the quest system in a bad way, that is probably causing lag for other people on the server, we have to make a hard decision to basically change how that happens so that we minimize the effect of lag. So I get what you're saying, but like having that many people in one area and encouraged to do that for XP loot for monster kills was just a hard decision. It's always hard when we're doing something because of lag that the players were like, but we got together and this was a reason for us all to get together. But having that many players all hitting the same quests over and over again on the landscape was really hard on the servers. And so it was difficult to change. There are definitely some dailies in Gundabad that you would get 4 groups together in order to do. Eventually, we do want to revisit some of those to maybe make them group oriented and give less of a reason to do raid. And so we are aware that that is an issue that we need to address. I can say something about the teaser. It is unlikely that we're going to be creating types of content outside of the core loop, like a mounted combat system or a ship system. Like we may have other ways of interacting with ships, but you probably won't be sailing around on the ship boarding system, only because unless we feel that system really builds into the core loop of gameplay. And so I don't want people to run away with my hint and start coming up with entire infrastructure changes in order for that. that was not my intention.
We've got big imaginations here. What can I say?
Yeah, we have big imaginations. I already see them going off. Let's see. Lore Master, I think talking specifically about future changes to any of the classes is probably out of scope of here. And honestly, if I did and the players took it as a promise, systems would want to definitely shoot me with Nerf darts, if not worse. So that's the thing. Also, I have to be careful because the content person now has a big sword as a trophy, so he can technically hit me. So I have to be careful what I say.
We have answered this several times, I know, in the past, but I'm seeing a couple of questions about, will we ever get a lifetime account again? What would you like to say to that?
It is unlikely that we would add more life. For a variety of reasons. So I would not wait on that. character customization options are coming. We're working on them. I have seen them for men, and I like men with a capital M because it sounds, it definitely sounds, it has a gravitas to it. But my only issue is that for uh, humans, I don't want to uh, downplay, the person who killed the Witch King, and but yes, there are character customization options. One of the cool things that they're working on is you actually have sliders now that you can kind of modify your face. That they're in testing, and I foresee that coming to the game at some point. So even if you have your current character, that head will be able to, like, if you just want to change the look and feel of that a little more, that would be cool. So I think that would be exciting for players. We'll have a whole bunch of new heads. We have some new hairs for that. So yeah, uh, I don't have any news on River Hobbit. I really like the idea and want to get it in, but uh, maybe next year. I would love it, but I can't make any promises on that. What else? Talked about character customizations. Anything? I don't know what Elder Streamers questions previous were. Are there any other things from Facebook or the forums that you
Yeah,
want to?
sure. I mean, there's plenty here. Let me see. This one comes from. I mean, this is a little bit of a wish list question, but excuse me. Thessalian Lotus asks, have we ever thought about adding additional landscape content through the existing regions that would be less linear and free-roaming friendly, like additional auto-bestowed quests, deeds regarding XP posts, other standalone activities with XP attached? So basically, thoughts about the open world nature of the game's world and taking greater advantage of it.
That's a good question. I mean, one of the ways we do that is by doing further adventures. And the further adventures basically ends up existing in different places, although that's mission based in order to allow a wide variety of levels to do that. The question is, for a majority of our player base, if we added more missions in some place in the middle, how who would that serve? I think that leveling people would like that, but there's already so much content that people are actually using stones to slow down their XP so that they don't outlevel it. So it seems like adding more content, more side quests that would make it even that would encourage that even more is probably not something that the game needs in the level. There might be sparse areas. If you know of sparse areas that, like, hey, I went through this area and couldn't find enough stuff to do to make it through the level, I think that's something. But when people are using their stones to slow down the leveling, explore every nook and cranny, and they're getting too much XP, it's hard for us to make the decision to spend precious resources adding more quests in that area. But like I said, one of the things that you can do is we're trying to add level agnostic quests in the form of skirmishes and missions. And the reason we did that is exactly for that, so that if you're moving through that, then it would be you can basically go off, do some extra stuff, and then come back to it.
All right. Another one from the forums. This is Daggle Heel. Will there be an update of the old starter areas? I think they could need a little love.
I think that there's a couple of changes, but we have a new starter area coming, and that you'll be able to play through that on alts if as part of Before the Shadow, if you own that. But so starter areas are tough because the old starter areas, they did so many iterations based on people being in the game and finding the way through, that a lot of the when you're an experienced gamer, your idea of what you want from a starting area and someone brand new is completely different. Like when I play with some of my friends who've never gamed before and they're playing through Lotro and they're still trying to figure out how to turn with the mouse, what they need from a starting area in order to get them into the game is completely different than what a lot of the people who even know that this stream exists understand. And so part of that is it takes a tremendous amount of um, research and player focus groups in order to create a starting area that's truly friendly for new people, if that makes sense.
Mhm. I wanted to go back. There's a couple of questions from chat asking to clarify some verbiage we used in reference to the future update 35. I think we had used the words instance cluster. Did we actually mean a formal, as players would think of it, instance cluster, or something else perhaps?
I mean, we're still in the process of designing it, but I would expect multiple instances with hopefully higher tiers. More than one 6-man, more than one 3-man is our goal. Whether we can accomplish that or not, I think time will tell. When I swapped back to talk about missions, I talked more about missions in the sense of the shadow, because I was trying to talk about our plans for end. It's clear that next year, in the updates leading up to our big fall thing, it will need to be endgame, and that our fall update will probably be a level.
I see a couple questions about a PVMP document. I've seen quite a few such documents over the years, but I think the one you're referring to has been seen by Orion at least, and I know I posted it up for the systems team to take a look at. So
I have seen secret images of an XP disabling pocket item with stats. When that comes out, or what that is, or what happens, I am unwilling to say. But I have heard whispers of such a thing.
all right. This is a second part of a question from Ms. Ivana that seems like a decent question to answer. Is it possible / likely / certain that a new server will be introduced with the hope that people from a certain television show may prefer a fresh start server? Or perhaps because we feel a brand new server could be better optimized to reduce lag. So do we have any likelihood of a new server introduced in the near future?
We definitely want to introduce new servers, especially when we have different ways of playing. I don't expect to see one in the next 2 months, but we could open up a temporary server if there's a giant influx of people from before the shadow, and we are prepared to do so with open transfer, so people can move to that, play, and then move back. We have that capability.
I've heard it described as consider it almost like a bit of an overflow server or something. You could almost think of it as, right?
Yes, like an overflow server.
All right. So there's a lot of kind of wish list questions from the forums as well. Are there anything you want to bring up from chat here while I'm kind of looking through them?
I would expect. So when you say elves shortly thereafter, I think that doing character options is actually really time consuming. And so, yeah, eventually you will see extra options for elves shortly thereafter. No, because every time it's one thing to sculpt the head, but it's another thing to now have it fit and redo all of the hairs for it, and then make sure all of the items attach to it properly. So I would say that, will elves eventually see improved extra options? Yes. Will it be shortly thereafter? No. I don't think shortly thereafter is a phrase I would use to get up hopes. And I'm pretty sure the systems knows that, of the players' desire for other Bridal LI options. I would have to check with them to see if anything is what I would call in the work. Right? I know that they've been talking about it when we've had systems meetings.
Um, we removed reputation accelerators from these skirmish camps over the summer, and there were some players who were very unhappy with our decision to do that. And one of the questions we received on the forums is from a Tyrion Hammerfist, who said that in their mind, the problem is that at non-cap content, it takes a lot of time to max out reputation, and for some areas, story content is hidden behind max reputation. Factions that need a particular revamp are, this person gives a list like Ensa Fanghorn, Survivors of Wildermore, etc. Can either reputation accelerators in the skirmish camp return, or could we have reputation systems changed to minimize the grind for non-cap content factions?
I hate to do this, but I'm going to push on that question because I want to talk to systems before it. I remember we were discussing this, and there was and I can't remember now the whole discussion revolving around that, and I don't want
Okay.
to misrepresent anyone's reasoning, or I apologize. I don't mean to drop the ball on you on that. I would want to have a discussion with the team before I tackle that particular.
Okay. Sounds good.
The drop rate of things are, some of them are low. I think that going into specific drops rates is out of the scope of this kind of meeting. So,
I'll just look it through forum questions here while keep an eye on chat.
Next year. So 35 will focus on instances, and I expect
Could you
36.
answer? Sorry to interrupt, but could you say the question you're answering? What's next year?
Hills of Laurelin.
Okay.
When can we expect max level content region? The next update after Before the Shadow can talk about instances, and then probably the update after that will probably include max level content.
Like that just helps people, especially in the archive, who maybe don't see the Twitch chat or whatever.
Sorry, my bad.
Have we given any thought to updating Lelia's market? This is from the forums from Moskva.
That would be a content question. I don't have any information on that specific question, so I apologize. Did you end up muted?
Oh, did I? I don't think so.
Oh, no, Mike. I know that the new skirmish will have rewards commensurate. I don't know whether all of skirmishes will be retrofitted. I don't think all of skirmishes would be retrofitted yet, although that is something that we want to. We do want to do a new raid as next year at some point. I don't want to promise it with U35. Oh, with U34 for Before the Shadow. No, we don't have a raid. We don't have a raid in Before the Shadow. We plan on having it late next year. Supporter packs. Will there be further ones? I think that we can tweak it so that it's, that we have more cool stuff for the players. But yes, we will probably have further supporter packs. The players were great at supporting us, and I want to thank all of you for doing that. And we would like to do more. If they will look exactly the same, I don't know. I think that there is some extra value that we can add to them.
Thessarian asked in the forums list, any plans to do a UI improvement, specifically as it relates, in this person's question, about a 4K monitor?
Yes. 4K monitors will be some of the UI improvements we're looking at for low turbulence. I love Hobbit support packs. That would be great. I'm not going to reveal any of our sale information. That will be for marketing to reveal to you.
Martina wanted to know about the status of transfers from closed worlds. This would be the
The
legacy server transfers, essentially.
legacy server
Yeah.
transfers. Let me look into that. I know that there was movement forward on that. That it was a hardware issue with the hardware that they were on and finding the space for it. And I think that we moved ahead on that. So one of the interesting things is that we're actually moving offices, and so a lot of our tech ops and people are working heavily in order to do that. So I apologize, but that's a big deal for us to move offices. We're not moving very far, but it's still a big deal of bringing everything over, making sure everything's operational. So that'll be something that's one of the issues that tech ops is working on, and they're doing a great job. So
All right.
I know one of the difficulties of being in my position is I like to talk about exciting things, and then the requirements of kind of the game change. So something like River Hobbits can be something that I want to do, but as the requirements of the game change and we realize it's not just right, or when we have to make a hard decision about to cut something, sometimes some of these things leave on the cutting room floor and to be revisited later. That's actually really hard. I don't like talking about things and then being the one that has to cut them, and it's just one of the difficulties of being in game development is making those hard decisions. So zoomable maps is a tremendous amount of concept artwork. Like it's it's surprisingly time consuming to do stuff. When you have a limited type of, like for a game like Assassin's Creed or something where they're not constantly adding new land. They do cool new DLCs, but they don't usually add as much like world landscape content. It's easier to do because the whole scope of that is well defined. But when you're adding new regions constantly, the rate at which we do, spending weeks and weeks doing a whole zoomable map system is hard to add to the weight of doing new content landscape.
This is
Um,
actually an earlier question. Sorry, were you done with that question? Let me make sure.
yes.
Okay. Um, Namaris had asked earlier, how will Before the Shadow work as a starter zone? Does it replace the Shire for hobbits, Archit for humans, Ered Luin for elves and dwarf folk?
So when you go in the login screen, you'll have a chance to go and choose an alternate zone to level. What we'd like to do, but I don't know if we can add it. We'd like to make it so that you can choose any of the zones, because one of the problems is, as much as I love the different racial zones, sometimes if you've already played through them, you want to level with a friend and you have to wait until you're high level and then kind of ride all the way over. We'd love you to be able to actually choose any of the racial areas, regardless of race, except maybe for high elves and stout axe dwarves because of lore. So that's one of the things that we'd like to do. I don't know that we can do that yet, but there's a UI and you'll get to choose what starting area you are, the traditional one, and there'll be a message that says, if you're a new player, we suggest you play in the traditional racial one. And then there'll be a new one that you can choose that will require Before the Shadow that you can play in for your alts, or if you want to have alternate story. So uh, that's Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I know you like to talk tech a little bit, so let me this is a very early question that caught my eye. Is the Lotra launcher essentially the Asheron's call launcher? Question mark.
There are so there's a lot of things that I recognize in the games, both games, from Asheron's Call, because that's their legacy, which is kind of interesting. But it is an old launcher. I don't think it's the specific Asheron's Call launcher, but I would not be surprised to see bits and pieces of that legacy in there.
Yeah, I don't think I would, even if they have some, there's like a descendant line there. I think they're different enough that it's probably hard to say it's the same as put colloquially like that. Would be
Yeah,
my guess.
this is how bad it is working on the games for this long. There'll be times when I'm talking to the engineers and I'll be like, wait a minute, doesn't the code work this way? And they're like, no, Rob, that was Asheron's call. Right? That's how bad it is. Where I'm like, oh, right, yeah, you're right. The code does not work that way anymore. That was an old AC code thing. So yeah, and then I have to go back in the code and look and see. So
OEB Pete asks, when does Shadows launch? Sorry if this was answered. We haven't stated that yet.
yeah, we haven't stated that yet. Soon.
I know
We did
we're in the
talk about-
waiting minutes here. Now's the time to drop big spoilers. Do you feel like it? But no, we shouldn't. It'll be soon though, real soon. So.
Yeah, I believe that current characters will be able to travel to the new areas and play through if they want. There will be a way of doing it. Before the Shadow will be so. Before the Shadow is a mini expansion, and in the past, one of the things that the players were talked about for mini expansion is one is the VIPs were like, if you have to do a mini expansion, how can we see our value? And the other one was the upper bundles did not seem to have value. We hope to have solved both those issues with this, in that the VIPs will see a discount. It'll be cheaper for you, so that will add your value. And then, like the upper bundles, we've really gone in to make sure that we fixed any concerns about value there. So, as for you will get details. This is not the place where I want to put in details about all of the goodies and stuff on it. You'll see, because I don't want that to then spread organically. I want the players, when we reveal that information, to have a definitive place to look at that. And it's bad for me to speak about that, because anything that I say will go secondhand to a whole bunch of players, and we want to make sure you have a place.
It won't be that far away before we're going to have answers to these questions, most likely. So,
yeah.
Can existing high-level characters go into before the Shadow Zones? Yes.
Yes.
It'll be over level by quite a bit, but there's no. The only thing that will be blocked access that I can think of would be that very first starter instance. But to experience that, you can just create a new character and see it or something if you want.
VIP is VIP. That is correct. The legendary servers should have before the Shadow, although that is an excellent question. Before the Shadow will be unlocked on legendary server, since it is, if the legendaries, because most of the legendary servers at this point are beyond that, so there's no reason for us to hold it.
That is an interesting question. We're going to have a little discussion about how we're going to make that all happen, but yeah.
Yeah.
Any kind of final question here before we wrap things up? And I do want to thank you for this hour of your time here, and I want to thank everyone in the audience, of course, for being here as well. Not seeing any immediate questions we can answer, so maybe we should wrap it up, huh?
We're always looking for security vulnerabilities, and we have a whole tech ops team that looks for it. So we're taking that very seriously.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you very much, Sev, for joining us here. This archive will be available on both Twitch and YouTube. It takes a couple hours for it all to process, so a little bit later this afternoon. Thank you very much, Sev, for joining us here. Thank you so much for everyone in chat room, in the chat, for watching this video afterwards. Hello. Thank you for being here, and we'll do another one of these again soon. So have a great day, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.